Hi, friends. This is Adam Shoemaker, Rector here at St. Stephen's Episcopal Church in downtown Charleston, back for another edition of Rector's Corner. And I'm so very happy to have with me today the Reverend Canon Ramelle McCall, who is our Canon for Leadership here in the Diocese of South Carolina. And we're going to get to know Canon McCall a little bit better and learn a little bit more about what his role is in the diocese. Thank you so very much for joining us today, Canon McCall. I wonder if you could begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience in the church and where you came from before you were in South Carolina.
Thank you, Reverend, and it's good to be with the good people of St. Stephen's and with the greater diocese of South Carolina. I bring greetings from my former diocese in the Episcopal Diocese of Maryland. Believe it or not, Maryland is my hometown. So I was born and raised there. The seeds of the Episcopal Church really started when I was in North Carolina in divinity school. And so one thing led to another, moved back to Baltimore, went through the process and got ordained there. And so I've been blessed for the past almost 11 years of having experience as being a rector with some interim experience being a college chaplain, also doing some community organizing under my last call as urban missioner for the Diocese of Maryland, which allowed me to be a networker throughout strategic areas of Baltimore City, particularly West Baltimore, when you've known a lot of things that were happening in that particular area back in 2015. And so it gives me great pleasure to serve as your new canon for leadership and to be there to do that gracious work. So I don't want to give too much answers, Reverend. You tell me what ways I can answer your questions.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I would like to now transition to your new role with us in South Carolina. This is an exciting time in the Diocese of South Carolina. We're seeing new faces come onto the diocesan staff. Last month, I did have an opportunity to interview our Canon for Common Mission, Ryan Curry, and talk a little bit about that role. I wonder if you could say how you see your role as Canon for Leadership and how you have been experiencing that new role in these first few months.
Thank you for the question. My role is quite of multifold. So the leadership part is obviously around church vitality. And so a lot of my energy has been working with our churches, a couple of churches who, for example, may be looking for a rector, or some of our parishes who have not had a priest in a while, so to speak. And so for me, is to really delve into those parishes, start really working with them and meeting them where they are with some of the things they're doing on the ground. And so I call that vitality work. And then we work into that relationship and see where the Spirit intersects and see how I, as canon, start opening up resources, how I can start leveraging some of our folks throughout the diocese to maybe come in to do a couple of this or that, or maybe some sacramental presence, et cetera. Plus, there's a lot of good fertile ground that's happening here in the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina, because I feel like we're in a really good building up stage, if you will, as a diocese. And so with the leadership that we're bringing in here into South Carolina is really awesome through many of our parishes, and lay leadership as well. And so part of my role as canon is to immerse with some of the programs that are here, whether it be on the transitional side, like Sacred Ground, which is the other half of what I do with racial justice. And so, as I've told people, we have to do what we have to do as a church to combat the inequalities and to make sure that everyone feels loved and that everyone feels like they are part of the table. So what does that mean? That means that I work with Racial Justice Commission, working with some of those programs, as I mentioned, like Sacred Ground, working with some of our neighborhood committee members and associations throughout the Charleston community and the greater area as well. So it's not just Charleston, but other areas of South Carolina. If parishes want to talk about such things and wants to leverage some of my advice, and how could we build those conversations, and how can we have that in a more holistic way, I'm happy to facilitate that and happy to help in those particular ways. Third, I have been blessed to serve as staff liaison for Commission on Ministry. What a wonderful experience in ministry to be a part of. And so I work with our chair for Commission on Ministry and other commission members as we're really starting to better articulate what that looks like. And so we're really working on those reports. We're working on how to re-strategize the particular themes throughout Commission on Ministry. So that way we do all that we can to articulate what ministry looks like, particularly lay ministry and ordained ministry. So really excited about that. And I'm also liaison for youth leadership. So far, so good. I participated in the first Acolyte Festival for South Carolina a month ago, and that was wonderful. We're getting ready for a couple of retreats and a couple of other things that are happening for the diocese. Any kind of representation, whether it be youth province, or let's say EYE, which is Episcopal Youth Event, that is something that would fit within my vernacular. So I work with this wonderful adult and children's youth commission. Actually, it's a children and youth ministry commission. And it's a group of young adults, and we're all working together to strategize each of those programs together. So I'm so grateful to work with all these various teams as Canon for Leader.
That is a full plate, but all the various pieces that you are tending to are so critically important. When I talked to Canon Curry, I did acknowledge the unique time that we are in this diocese, as we are welcoming back some congregations. And so I would imagine focusing on congregational vitality, that you're tending to a lot of different dynamics. You have pre-existing congregations, you have returning congregations, you have the communities that sadly are not going to be able to go back to their original churches and are looking for land to purchase to build a new sanctuary. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about how you're needing to respond to all those various things at this present moment in time.
Well, my particular umbrella, and you've heard our bishop articulated quite a few times, is working with the historically disenfranchised. And what we mean by that is the churches of color throughout our diocese that, in all due respect, have not really had the same kind of privileges and platforms as others. And so I kind of work specifically a little bit on those tiers. And so what I've been trying to do is work with those parishes, letting them know that I'm available, helping them as they discern new leadership, lay and ordained, learning to see how we can look towards the future on finding a more holistic model so we can bring some dawson resource and some help maybe on some Sundays or other programs, so to speak, and just simply engaging. Because now, as you've mentioned, we're in this rebuilding stage. We have the returning parishes and others, but there's really good fertile ground. It seems to me that with South Carolina, we have amazing potential resources that we could really begin to tap into. And so while as Canon, I'm working with these parishes, I think it's also important for me to make sure that we build broader relations throughout the diocese. So as Canon, how can I communicate the needs and resources for the areas that may not have the platforms and administrative help as some of our other well-to-do parishes can? You know, how can I say, okay, well, what about this church down the road? Can we bring some meaningful relations, so to speak? And even start thinking on a little bit of the ecumenical piece. You know, are there some churches that are in good relation? We match theology, if you will, and we know that the Spirit is with us both. So how can we move into those relations together in a very mutual way? And so I get really fun work to build relationships as a leader. And so I'm truly excited about how all those intersections will happen. And it's all about sometimes the right place and the right time, and the right conversations and in the right moment. and just having these aha, like lightning bulb thinking or ideas that just kind of comes together. So I'm really excited to really see potentially how that will link in together, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that in this moment in time, those denominational boundaries that have so long divided us from fellow Christians are sort of falling away. And it feels like ecumenism and partnerships really are going to be so critical to our future as a church. And so I think that relational work you're doing is really exciting and important for all of us to pay better attention to. Because your role is so relational, it feels like there's going to be a lot of different ways for people in the pews, in congregations, to have an experience of you, to interact with you. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the different ways that people in the diocese might have an opportunity to interact with you.
Thank you for that question. What I've been trying to do, and I've got a long ways to go, is really try to visit all of our parishes. And so Sundays, knock on wood, gives me some leverage to do that. And so I would kindly give a little email to the rector or interim and say, hey, I'm coming, to the warden to say, hey, I'll be there. And I think what better way than just join you on a Sunday service? What better way to just be there and to experience worship? And I've been having a good time. And so far, so good. I'm still covering ground with so many of our parishes. And so I figured, let me use that amazingly wonderful low-hanging fruit just by enjoying the worship experience on Sunday and also other activities that will unveil. We have a couple of potential deanery meetings, which really fall under the lap of our other Canon, Ryan Curry. And so we're doing a couple of introductions that way, particularly with our clergy, deaneries and things of that nature. And so my thing is try, to be available with the different events that are happening throughout the diocese and just showing up and being present. Because sure, you've read the newsletter and the e-blast, et cetera, but there's no better presence than a physical presence in these particular places. And so it is truly my goal to really make those rounds throughout the Diocese of South Carolina. And I'm just excited to just see what the Spirit is doing on a given Sunday in our parishes. And just thrilled and grateful for a parish to have me in their pews. And so that's one of the many ways that I really want to begin to do that. And I know that will be, more of a long scale initiative of what I want to do and then make second visitations. So I'm just excited to learn South Carolina in that way. And there'll be other ways too. So for example, people have my cell phone number and my email addresses on the website, et cetera. I'm always happy to have appointments that way. I'm happy to set up to have lunch with you or coffee. I do love my coffee. That is my confession to people. So let's set that up. I have a healthy appetite. I work out from time to time, so that way I could eat and have lunch or whatever. And so I think the fellowship and the worship should work together. So that way we could simply have a conversation. And so I'm open to having those chats with folks throughout our diocese and to have fun with the particular initiatives that each of our parishes are doing in their given areas.
One question that I asked Canon Curry, he had come like yourself from a congregation to his new role, and that's a real shift. And I wonder what you see as the real differences between the role you had in Maryland and the role you are now occupying in South Carolina, and what you're most excited about as you continue to grow into your new position as our canon for leadership.
Well, the difference is, as for gracious rectors such as yourself, really the primary role is to be the shepherd over your parish and to be there in the ups and downs in whatever way that you can be. And let me be clear, I have truly enjoyed my role as rector. It truly is a gift, and I'm grateful for every aspect of ministry. I think what I learned in those particular calls is you're learning to immerse yourself with a group of people and learning family dynamics and church dynamics and all of those things, because that all runs together as you become a leader, so that you immerse yourself into that relationship and then lead together to make that collaborative move. I also see a lot of similarities currently, even as Canon, because we are working together as a diocese. Sure, every parish has its own unique culture and unique things, et cetera. And that's how the way churches are, regardless of diocese. But what I really feel is it allows me to be prayerful just as much as a rector with our relationship building, to be prayerful about the initiatives, to be prayerful even when there are concerns throughout our diocese. Problems are a real thing in life, or worries or stressors. And so I don't think I've lost the pastoral part of who I am as your new canon for leadership, which means that, if you need prayer in any way, even as a canon, I'd be more than happy to pray with you. If you need that conversation to just kind of say, hey, I need a moment, I say, sure, I'm happy to be a listening ear. So those particular attributes just doesn't fall away just because you're not in the role of a rector, in my opinion. I think, in fact, they're broadly more enhanced in all aspects. And so I see a lot of great similarities on that. And even as a rector, you're there going to bed at night, beginning to dream and reimagine how to think of new ideas for your given parish and context. Well, it's the same way I'm doing now as canon as well. How can we be more vital? How can we raise more leadership? Because I, for one, know that it can't just be ordained. It has to be laid. They have to run together. I am a true fan and believer of that as well. And so part of me is seeing the leadership and all different ways of folks who have encountered me, who have talked with me, and I'm hearing their gifts and I'm hearing their fruits. And so part of me is lifting those things up to God and say, okay, Spirit, how can you use us in this given moment in time to lift up the gracious kingdom of yours and to do the will of yours as well? And so somehow or another, God just brings those particular seeds of intersections and affirmations. And before you know it, sometimes when you ask someone to do something, believe it or not, it just may be the answer prayer for whoever that might be. And third, we haven't lost our preaching and sacramental capabilities. So you'll see us in some of our canons doing some occasional supply and all of those things, so to speak, or guest preaching or all those things, because we still feel called to the theological platform as well as to the table and all of those as is entailed as clergy as well. And so we're grateful to have this new unique call, along with still having the intersection of being at the liturgy of the word, the liturgy of the table, and being with the great people of God, if that makes sense. And so I'm just excited to just see how all of those things intertwine and how they intersect in this given moment, not just for me, but for South Carolina.
Well, and as I've said, this is such an exciting time, and in partnership with our bishop and with our canons, this is a time for visioning, for dreaming, for helping this wonderful diocese move into a new season. And I thank you for your willingness to take the leap of faith and join us. And I hope you are settling into South Carolina well and enjoying your new home here. But thank you so very much for making the time to talk a little bit about your role. And for those listening in, thank you for being with us. We have our diocesan convention coming up next month. Will be a wonderful opportunity to gather for the diocese. If you are not a delegate, or you can register as a visitor, you also can follow the convention's activities online. But I will be back next month for another edition of Rector's Corner. In the meantime, friends, stay safe and well, and you keep the faith. Take care. Bye-bye.